Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, everybody. This is Alex and Alex. You guys are not getting it yet, but you're going to get it. I'm Alexander O'Neill. This is Alexander Johnson. And we are now a team. So, the track that you're going to be hearing today, we're going to be playing Criticize, and we'll be going through that and kind of giving you guys a little play-by-play on how we recorded and how we got to the place where it became a song. Because a lot of times, you hear a track is a track, but it's not a record yet. So we're going to try to give you guys a little more insight on how to get to a record, okay?
Okay, so we're in the control room now, pulled up Criticize 3.0. I'm going to start with the kick drum, talk you through the drums. So this is an amalgamation of mainly a live kit of about 12 microphones and a couple of stock sounds that I have that I've collected over the years that we build in and blend in to make a bit of drum replacement, which I'll show you in a sec. So we'll start with the first kick, which is just outside the kick drum, just about an inch outside, just in the hole. And there's not a great deal going on because I want the natural sound to poke through. So we've got an SSL channel on there, which has got a little bit of an expander just poking through. No compression on that. I just wanted that to be live and have a bit of punch. Dropped about 350 out there, which you can tell, which is frequencies we don't really use, which is why we get rid of those. It's a good one for toms and for overheads, and it creates a lot more space within the mix if you can get rid of this 250 to 450 kind of frequencies, and even up to 650. If you can play with those on a kit, you generally find you have a bit more space with the mix in the end. So basically that's on there. We've got the R-Bass, which is a fantastic plug-in for just bringing up your basses and your kick drums. Again, you get a sense of the difference between it. So very subtle, because it can be quite powerful, so it's just nice and subtle to taste again with ear. So if I turn it off, you can hear where it's a little flatter and it's just a little warmer and a bit more punch, and it just sits in the mix a bit better. So once I've done that, I will then compress it. So it's very, very, very gentle, a 6:1 ratio. Just touching it, just kissing it, nothing too drastic. A faster release because I want the compressor to hit it, but because it's a kick drum and there's space between, I can play with the release time so it's not attacking it straight away or it's not releasing it straight away. There's a bit of variant with the kick drum, slightly different with other instruments where it's moving faster and you need more control, but with the kick drum you've got a bit of space to work with. So it's very subtle, it's not getting rid of the natural element of it at all. And then something that I use is a little trick of mine, which is the BT compressor, which is a copy of one of the classic compressors, and that's just for a little bit of volume and a little bit of valve amp, really. That's all that does, just to give it a little bit of dirt and a bit more added warmth. So then we have the kick out, which is about, again, depending on what you're doing, it's about a foot from outside the kick drum. Again, it all depends on size. This wanted to be a live sound with the kick, with the kit. The whole song is basically, I tried to do it as if you were looking down from a booth at an orchestra, the old film score ways. So if the John Barry sound for the Bond soundtrack, the whole band were behind, and the kit is a little bit more distant than you would normally have it. In certain music, the snare's very in your face, kit's very in your face, but I wanted depth with this. So this is a little bit more depth and a little bit more control. So this is the kick out, same kind of thing going on with that as we did. It's a little bit brighter. So this is a bit more punch to this one, so there's not as much bottom end going on. Again, there's that frequency again, the 250 that we're losing. A little bit of the R-Bass is doing the same job. More subtle though, just bringing out just the fatness there again. So the two together, you can feel the power, but you can also feel the snap from the kick. You can feel the expander just poking it through a little bit more. So that's just one kick. There comes the out kick, and we've got a little bit more liveness to it, a little bit more sort of feel, which is what we want. So same again, just a little bit of compression, 6:1 ratio I would imagine again. Yeah, again you can see it touching a little bit more probably with that, because I also like to use the room sound as well. So I don't gate as much with drums when I'm doing the live stuff, because I like the bleed from other microphones in. If you're doing pop music and you're tight and you're clean, you're going to want to gate things, you're going to want to separate stuff, you're going to want to, you know, spaces in. With this I didn't, because the warmth of the snare drum from the kick creates the more room sound and a more natural feel. So that's a little trick to use. Don't overgate drums if you want a live sound. So just to add to that, I have two plugins that two kick drums that I use quite a lot. One of them are called Groove, or Grov as it says there, which again is more of a dance kind of kick. It has more dance elements to it, so you've got power in there, you can hear, you've got thump to it, and I don't do very much to that at all because it's a plugin I use. So it's the same thing again, the SSL on there, no expansion on that at all, just a little bit of 2K poking out just to give it a little bit more, as you can hear there. Drop it out, it loses all its energy completely. If I bring it in, it's got miles more energy, and it's a bit liver sounding. So lose the EQ, more dance, bring the EQ in, slightly liver. So you can play with that. I use this on dance records, on live records, hip hop records, everything. So that's one of those that I use. So it's a little clever trick with the EQ. Same again, dropped a bit 250 out there. This that muddy frequency which we don't use, so lose it. I'm of the opinion, like a lot of other producers, cutting is better than boosting. I learned that very quickly, which is a good thing. So my favourite one of all, which is the little one I use, is a Jurassic 5 kick drum from a track called What's Golden, which is something that I use, and this is just my top end, and just again a little bit more of attack and a little bit more punch. Same kind of thing, just the SSL touching it just to give it the warmth. There's a little bit more compression going on this one. You can see there I've got about 3 decibels that I'm dropping down there, high pass filter going on there as well. So you can see everything up, probably just under 20 out, don't take too much out, and then nothing really going on there. So it's just the expander again just to poke it, and the compressor just to bring it down, and that just sits between the 4. That just sits between all 4 of them, so you can feel with the groove in, it's a very, very different sound. That creates a lot more punch. So you can hear in the background, like I mentioned a minute ago, you can hear the snare playing, the hi-hat playing. Sometimes that's a good sound. You know, in the old days they did 4 microphones, 2 microphones, 1 microphone, so you kind of play with it. So that's all 4 of the kick drums together, so that's those done. Okay, so then move on to the live snare, which is the top snare. So I generally do bottom and top, but very rarely use the bottom unless I'm doing something specific with the sound. So we'll just take you through the snare drum, which is a Black Beauty, just for the record, a Ludwig Black Beauty. And again on this, we've really got the SSL again, which is taking a little bit up to about 60 Hertz off. I'm just rolling that off. A touch of 3K, which is just for the attack of the snare drum. I'm not rolling anything off the bottom end else, because I'm doing that at the top there. So there's no compression on that at the moment, no expansion or anything. It's just a live, natural feel from the room again, just for the sound. So that's that. Tiny bit of EQ. Something that I've learned for warmth of snare drum, about 4 at 100, so 4 decibels at about 100 is generally a really nice whack to the snare drum. If you're doing, again, dance music and things like that, not so much, but with this I was going for the old 70s drum sound, and that really helps to just anchor in, make the cohesion of the snare drum a lot more powerful at the bottom. Again, just a tiny touch of 10K at the top, just to bring out the brightness of it, which the bottom snare helps with as well, but I just like a little bit of 10K. It just seems to bring out a bit of sparkle in the snare drum, and that tends to work good in a live environment. So the bottom snare is there. I'll play the two together. Very minimal. You'll hear that on headphones, but minimal. But it's just a little bit more excitement with the bottom snare, just a bit more energy with it. So it's just very, very subtle. And then back to that top snare, my SSL compressor, which I absolutely love, it's one of my favourite compressors, and that will be just, again, subtle, won't be too much, very minimal movement at all. As you can see there, it's on auto release because I like it to dictate with snares, because of the different transients, different attacks. You've got your grace notes, you've got your full hits. So I like the auto release to just kind of feel its way around and just see where we're going with it. again, it's a very slow attack because I want the transients to come through. So again, minimal touch, minimal with the compressor. Just literally a couple of dB, no more than that. And again, just the BT compressor at the end is for the valve and for the warmth, and that's really all it's used for in that respect. Now with this one, with this drum sound, I immediately went for the natural sound of the kit and then added the plugins after. Can do it the other way around. Sometimes I can put the plugins in and the natural microphone sound doesn't matter because it's coming straight into the box and straight through the preamps and everything in there. This was slightly different. I set it up and mic'd it up to have that 70s sound, so I had to kind of be a bit true to the microphone setup. Okay, so moving on to the hi-hat then. This is minimal in volume, and I'll explain why when I get to the overheads, because this is based on the overheads, this kit. So these are all things just to bring sound up and just to add a bit of dynamic and a bit of dimension and depth to everything, not to be in your face and not to be up front. So again, it's minimal, it's rolling off 200, a little bit of 550 and 12.5 K at the top, just for the sparkle, just for that top end energy that we have in the hi-hats. Same with the toms really. It's not, again, the toms are quite natural, and it's purely because the overheads are doing most of the work. So with the tom, I've literally got, again, the SSL on there, and I've got some quite heavy EQing on the toms, and I'll get to that in a second when we go to the overheads. So what I tend to do with these is I tend to drop out everything below 65 Hertz, which is where your kick drum's going to be. I tend to boost around between 70 and 80. So there's a balance between your bass at 80 and your kick at 60. You've got a bit to play with in the middle, which is where I like to sit the toms. So I usually would boost with the R bass, boost the bottom end of the tom and then drop it, which I was saying before about cutting. It's a good trick sometimes to, if you boost, to cut around the boost, just so you're not bringing all those frequencies in as well. So that can help. So yeah, like I said, with the toms, minimal stuff, mainly live, just to keep them there, to keep them up in the mix. So very natural sounding. It's a Gretsch kit, so it's going to be really natural, so there's no problems with that. So this is where it starts to get interesting when we move on to the overheads. It's a good idea when you've got kit sounds, especially if you're using live, to get your overheads nailed first. So get your overheads set up in the room where you want them, get them positioned, make sure there's an even amount coming through. Make sure there's an even amount coming through from each one. Put them in a space where you can hear the kit, where you can hear the room, and then you can build it from there. So basically with the overheads, I've gone right over the kit. It's a spaced pair, 2 cardioid microphones spaced away from the kit. So this is what we've got with just that kit sound alone. And the click as well. So that is just the hi-hats on their own. Sorry, just the overheads on their own with nothing else. So the hi-hat is very prominent already. The snare is very prominent already. The kick needs to come in. Well, let's see how the toms sound when with just the overheads. So there they are. So everything is within that space. Everything is within the stereo band of that. So if I then bring things in very, very slowly, it starts to build itself up. The kicks coming in. There comes the snares coming in. Comes the hi-hat coming in. Okay, so there's the kick sound. That's what we do. Okay, now one other thing that I like to use, I'll just talk you through the overheads quickly. So it's very important with the overheads, this is the most natural sound for the kit. So it's the SSL channel strip again. Let's see what's going on. There's probably not very slight boost at about 14, just because I wanted a bit of air with this. Dropping again that frequency we keep talking about, that 350 from the overheads, getting rid of that completely. Quite a nice big chunk of that missing. Very minimal compression. You can hardly see it on the meter, but it is there. Very minimal. And that's just to keep control of it. Again, we talk about this cohesive thing with the control. So same with both those, the stereos. Both the stereo overheads are in that. So then what I have is a little trick. Now this is where it gets interesting. A ribbon microphone, Cascade ribbon microphone. Very dull, very different to the amount of frequency range that it picks up. And it's quite a dull microphone. So it's a mono version of it. And you can hear it almost sounds like a microphone from the 50s in the background. But what that does is that anchors the whole bottom end and gives you a little bit more grit and a bit more dirt to the sound. So if I bring the other overheads back in, already that bright sound we had before is warmer. Now you can use, for this sound, you could just use a kick drum, a snare drum and that one overhead if you wanted to, just to create a bit more of a 60s sound. Motown kind of sound, if you like. That's pretty much how they would have done that. So it's basically good to get a nice microphone set up, and you can choose then how many microphones you want to use. You just got to be careful with the phasing, which is always an issue with drums. And then finally with that, so just to talk you through what's on that quickly. Again, the SSL channel strip for the warmth and just for the purity of its sound. A little bit of 12 just to give it. You would normally give that more, right? I would normally give that a lot more, so we would normally be looking at this for it, just because it's so dull in itself. We'd probably go, I'm there at the moment, we'd probably go to about there. And that's what they would do with ribbon micros, whack a load of top end on it and blend it into the mix. But because of the sound I'm going for, which is that 70s kind of feel, I'll just drop it off a little bit. Same again, the 350s not being touched on this, because I need the fullness of the frequency spectrum. I want all of that within there. That is pretty much the heart of the sound, of the 70s sound. That's the heart, is the ribbon microphone. And then just some room microphones on the kit, just to finish it off. Space more than anything. Nothing going on with the at all, I don't think, on this with plugins. Nope, nothing going on at all with that. Again, natural. If it was a more forced kit sound, or it was something that had to be a little more deliberate, then you play more with the room heads. But they are just space, nothing more than space. So if I put them in with the other overheads, you can just hear it getting a bit bigger, subtle, just a little bit more depth, a little bit more size, and a little bit more space. Now, if you're going for the sound I was talking about before with the depth, so I wanted Alex at the front and this big orchestra behind him, so you couldn't differentiate between necessarily, you could just hear everything coming at you. That really helps the kit to just fold itself out the back, just a little bit of space. Again, depth key, but be careful overdoing things. The natural instrument was built for a reason. It was built as it was. We add plugins to things to suit our sound. And the only thing else I've added to the kit, particularly with that, was extra cymbals. And that's mainly because of the different mic placements in the room. It's just extra cymbals. There's nothing clever or technical about them. It's just additional cymbals from Dan playing it live, and then me sampling and using it back in. So it's live cymbals from the same kit, using the same set of cymbals we use. But just nothing major. Bottom end rolled off, quite a heavy top end at about 12 again, 12k. So it's typical cymbals, nothing, you roll the bottom end off up to about 120, because I've got enough of that going from the natural cymbal sound of the kit. So this is, I wanted to get just a bit more sizzle and a bit more energy and a bit more power from the cymbal. That was all I was looking for. I'm a massive gong fan, so there's a gong in here as well. And that's mainly because of the orchestral nature of the track. I felt there was a big expression before Alex came in. It's an aggressive vocal, it's quite an aggressive track. So I felt a gong would push the sound. It's almost like, you know, somebody taking the cover off something for the first time, and bang, there it goes. So it's a plug-in. It's a live gong, but it's again one that we've sampled. And just a little bit of mix saturation on this. This is another favourite plug-in of mine, the PSP mix saturator. Again, a little bit of tape saturation, nothing major, just to taste, just to make it sit in with the mix a bit more, a little bit more warmth, and add a little bit more dynamic to it, and just to bring it down a little bit, just to stop anything getting away. Now the only other thing with drums, and I won't take you through this because it's similar to what we did, this is a completely different take played by me. This is a totally different take, and it was just a middle 8 gap. What we did with this, we wanted, because it's a 70s sounding song, we wanted to go for a 70s sounding fill, and that kind of an interesting sound. So it's a very big, there's no rooms in this, it's just the ribbon mic, 2 overheads, a snare drum and the kick drums. That's all we were using with this, and the very, very old school sound. And it's just a little break, that's all we did. There's a little reverb trick that I've used on this, which I'll quickly show you. So that's the phrase. Now what I've done, instead of using sort of sticking reverb on the group at the end, or the way we would use it with group reverbs, I actually put quite a big Valhalla vintage reverb on just that ribbon mic I was talking about before. Now this kit sound on its own is a very 70s sounding kit, that sound. So again, if I just bring everything in slowly, you can hear where the reverb starts to take effect, but the kit becomes more natural sounding. If I take this reverb off, it loses all its dynamic. That could be from anywhere, any time, any moment in time. Add that little bit of reverb back on and all of a sudden we're in a different time zone again. That's a lot more 60s, more 70s. So that was the idea behind that. It was a 60s, 70s kind of James Brown, Prince kind of funk break. That's why I recorded it, drumming myself, as opposed to getting Dan to do it, because it was two different cuts. And there's minimal stuff going on with that, with the exception of that ribbon mic, which is again the SSL, dropped out there, a little bit of filtering going on. Quite a heavy 10K on it, because I wanted that one to be brighter than the original tape, because that's driving the whole song on its own. So that, yeah, again, nothing to do with the bottom end going on there too much. No compression on it at all, because again, more natural sounding. And then we've got the compressor going on there, but again, just for tube, for nothing, you know, too important. Just again to cohesiveness, just to keep it together. So we've got a little bit of percussion going on, not much, just a tambourine, just to help with the energy really, to push the track across. So there's not too much going on this, or there shouldn't be. Yeah, vintage warmer again. The natural sound of the tambourine is enough. I've dropped a little bit of 8K out just for that tambourine peak. When you hit it, there's a little peak you can get rid of. So the vintage warmer, which is another great plugin that I use. Be careful with this, obviously, again, it can destroy a mix. So a little bit of drive on it, a little bit of tape saturation on it, just to give it a bit of warmth, a bit of grit, a bit of character. I think that's the best thing. Tambourines can be quite characterless, so that just gives it a little bit more. And then to add to that, we've got live congas that we put in, but just EQ, nothing on those at all, but EQ. Bringing a tiny bit of, for some reason I put some 500 there. There's a reason for that. I think it must have been to, let's have a look, see. Ah, yeah, to get the hit, just to get a little bit more warmth on the hit. So nothing major going on with that either there, nothing too technical. Just a natural conga sound, because they build the congas to sound that way. So I don't want to mess too much with it. Okay, moving on to the basses, this is where it starts to get interesting. We've got, at the moment on this, 3 separate basses running. So I'll take you through the first bass. It's a room microphone and a DI with this particular bass. I've got 4 tracks going. So let's have a look at the first 2. So this is just the bass, natural DI'd bass. So I've got an auto align on this one because I was using a DI and a live mic. So we've auto aligned it just to make sure it's in phase properly. So I've got the R bass on again, which is a fantastic thing. So I'll drop that off. Still a good bass sound, still nice and fat. But again, it just fills that bottom end out. That's the 80 Hz I was talking about before, but very, very subtle with this R bass, very subtle. My new favourite plugins at the moment, the Fab Filter Collection, which I'm really enjoying using at the moment. A little bit of compression on that. It's a 4:1 ratio, which I tend to use for my basses. It's quite fast attack and a fastish release, and you can just see there, it's not doing too much to it. It's not, you know, really killing any dynamic. It's just sucking in little pockets, just to keep it even. Nothing more. Just very, very minimal, about 3 dB of compression coming in there, so it's nothing too much. A little bit of EQ we've got going on there, quite heavy EQ on it. Dropping everything out there underneath 30, not necessary for this sound. Bit of a scoop around 200, and then a little bit of a lift. Again, at the end, just to brighten it up, a bit of 8K shelf, just to give it, you can hear the fret noise, you can hear his fingers moving, just more for that live energy sound as well. So that's the, quite low because I don't really use that very loud. That's the Rode room mic. Same kind of plugins on there, but a little bit of reverb, which is interesting, just to create the depth of room. So I've lofted all the bottom end there, just bringing up a little bit of the mids and all the top ends out as well. So it's just to create a bit of pocket of dynamic for the bass to kick through. So the two together. You've got the DI, very dry, very punchy sounding, very standard bass, and then you've got the microphone underneath, which just adds a bit more energy, just gives it again more of a live sound, and just helps to add a little bit more to the track. So then what we did, after we'd done this, we decided, you know what, more of a wild sound, kind of something a bit more interesting. So we just added, played again though. We didn't double it, we played it again, and I'll tell you why in a sec. So this was the very heavily affected Acutron on the bass. We did it from the bass, so none of these are plugins from me. This was all done by Chris on his bass. Bit of peaking going on there. So bit of top end again. 350 missing. No compression on the SSL. That's coming from somewhere else. That's coming from the FabFilter. Again, just touching it. It's really just keeping it there. It's just holding it in place so it sits underneath the other two. So if we bring the two back in, so that's natural on its own, just the two mics and a DI. Then we bring the other bass in, and it's creating movement because of the wire and the filter. There's movement going on. So the reason why we recorded it twice, if you keep using the same thing on top of itself, we get this effect, and on top of it we get this effect, and it just becomes a block sound. If you manipulate sound, you can move these gaps that are there, fill the sound out a bit more. So we decided to play it again. Now he had to be tight while he was doing it because it could have got messy. Luckily he was, which was great. So that's basically a Acutron filter and a little bits of compression going on from him there. Then what we had going on just at the end of that was a bass synth, because with it being criticised, with it being an 80s mix, I did want to bring some elements into it. So it's the same kind of feel as what Chris played on his, but it's very bright, very punchy, very bright, loads of attack. Most important of all. So when we drop the two in again, so live bass with the synth out, live bass in, synth bass in, Chris's other bass in. So you can hear all that energy, all that movement, all that action going on within the bass. So that's 4 different bass takes, which then all goes to a group at the end, which probably got, let's have a look what we got on there. That's the bass. So just a compressor, and that is a sidechain compressor for the kick drum, which you'll know about, just to keep the kick and the bass. So the kick is just a slight more priority over the bass, which is something that those of you who do dance music and electric music will know quite a lot of. That's just really there to help me space, again, creating little pockets of space within the mix where we can sit things in. So there's nothing too technical about that, just a nice group to keep me having control over it as a whole. All right, okay, this is what started the whole track, was the clav. This is what got me interested in this arrangement of it, which is the clav sound. Now this is a clav from one of the plugins. It's quite dirty, it's got noise on it, which I liked because I've wired it, so I'm using an actual wire on it. So it's a bit noisy, so I've got an X click on there to denoise it. Just touching it just to try and get rid of it, but I didn't want too much getting rid of it because I quite liked the sound with where I was going with it, so it was all very natural again, very 70s sounding. So live wire will create that kind of noise. So we've got an SSL on there again, a little bit of compressor, you know that. Just a bit of compression going on. Not too much EQ, a little bit at the top end, about 10. Again, that 351 being brought out, and a tiny little 3.5 poke, just to give it that bit of extra attack, which is very important to it. Again, that goes to the groups. Okay, so moving on to the shamisen, which is an oriental instrument. This is actually in the original. It's not the same version, but I wanted to bring this in because it's my favourite part of the original. So I'll just play that. It's very much like a guitar. It's plucked strings, so you treat it very much like a guitar. So again on that, it's a natural sounding instrument. I keep using that word, but it's so important. It's a natural sounding instrument. So all I wanted to do with that was create space. And the way I created space was just add a little reverb to it, just to give it depth again. So again, it's a 2.5 delay. It's quite heavy on the mix. It's a 70% mix, so it's quite prominent as a reverb. I'll just play it without quickly. So That's without the reverb. Which has a lot more prominence and is more in your face, but doesn't have the same kind of vibe, character, the most important thing. So that's that. So that just sits in on the middle 8 and just adds a little bit of the original to it, just so we know it's there. Right, moving down then. So we're onto the piano, which basically is the verse kind of ambience. It's the anchor of the verse. As everything drops down, the piano just has that little bit of character to it. I'll just play you that. So that's quite, again, I'll take you to the, I do have some effects on the group at the end, which I'll quickly show you, but this again, it's the piano, it's the high notes, so the transients of the high notes, the hit of the actual key from the piano, all those things were very important. So it's a bit of reverb, it's a little bit of, a tiny bit of compression, and a tiny bit of EQ. So I'll play it without the reverb on again, you'll hear the difference. So again, static and in your face, quite prominent, which is not obviously what I want. So there's the depth to it again. 2.5 milliseconds again, similar kind of range. I don't want it to get too messy with the instruments, I want them all to kind of be together. So we've got a little bit of that on again, quite high in the percentage in the mix, so it's washing over it quite heavily. Tiny bit of compression, classic compressor rather than a ratio compressor, just again, barely touching it at all, and a bit more character, a bit of grit with the tube as well on there. So then we get to the solo Rhodes, which is just a little break in the middle to play the whole. Oh, hang on, no, we're on organ. This is me organ. Again, I spent a long time getting the sound of the organ, so I didn't want to mess too much with it. So we've got a little bit of, it's coming in a bit hot, but I'll explain why later on. There's a reason behind that. So that's quite a heavy 10K. Not much compression going on, I don't think. Now check it again. So brightness really, just top end, just to give it that little bit of, to poke it through. There's a lot going on in that part, so again I'll play that in a sec. So there's no reverb because I don't want this to be too washy. I want that to be prominent in your face, so I've took the reverb away from it. Alright, so in the context of the whole song, the chambers in everything sinks in with those reverbs. Again, we're creating this depth, which is hugely important in mixes. Depth can be just as important as volume. You know, you're looking at it as three-dimensional, front to back, side to side. You know, it's an easy way of creating a little bit of depth. Just quickly, why you might see a few things going in hot, obviously beware of gain staging. But because I mastered this project, I know where I can get a little bit more out of it, a little bit more clipping. In some instances can be okay, but like I say, if I was mastering this, I have more control. If it was going off to be mastered, I wouldn't have things clipping. It's just because I know where in the mix it needs to be and where I'm going to compress it and how I'm going to do it. So because of time purposes, it was easier for me to master the project as well. So if you see a few things clipping, it's okay. Don't be scared of red. People always are. Be wary of it, but don't be scared of it. Okay, so we've got two Rhodes coming from the Nords. I had two, which I'll just play in both, but there's only one playing. Oh no, back on organs again, sorry. So this is the verse organ, so this is very minimal. Again, natural sound. I spent a long time getting the road tree sound I wanted with the bars on the organ. A little bit of compressor on this because it's more static. It's more legato notes, there's not as much stabbing going on. So I wanted to just bring it all together and just bring some of the lows up. Just to kind of, again, cohesive, that's another word we use a lot. And it needs to just sit in on that verse. So with everything else that's going in the background, there's a reason that I use organs a lot when there's orchestras going on. If you don't have a chance to use real orchestras, I'm lucky that I can use a mix of live people and plugins and things and instruments, but using organs, rotary organs, helps to create movement within the back. So if you've got a static string line and you put an organ underneath, it actually becomes an oscillating line. So it has more vibrato as if the player was playing it. So it's a little trick, usually viola range, stick an organ underneath and it just helps to bring everything out. So it's minimal stuff again with that. We've got, like I said, top EQ going on, a little bit of compression just to round it off. But mainly underneath it's for feel purposes more than anything that. But on the top of that we have something else going on, which is more of the prominent one. Now this is kind of a mellotron organ, if you like. So this was ambience more than anything else. So with the organ together on top of itself, you can feel the two working together. One's a little lower, one's a bit brighter, so they complement each other pretty well. And again, that's the reverb that's doing, the FabFilter reverb that's doing most of the work, which is my new favourite one at the moment. Without anything, still an ambient sound, still sounds great. Can't really hear much difference, but it's there when the tail goes, which is more important. So same again, little bit of top, tiny little bit of compression from the SSL, which is just holding it together because it's legato notes again, so I don't have to worry about too much space in the instrument. So we can use that. It's like if you were painting, it's one big colour, one big block colour across to go in with all the other colours that you've used. So it's the grass of the picture, if you like, and look at it that way. I'm just going to this organ. So this bottom organ, I'll see what's going on this one. Alright, this is the chorus organ. So again, same thing, I spent a long time getting the sound, so it's just a bit of reverb, just a little bit less this time because it's more staccato notes. On the swell, I don't want the tail to hang over too much, so if you listen, it's a bit quicker in its stop. It's kind of gone there, and it's kind of gone there. So the combination, again, I'm lucky that I can use a combination of both. So I can get a hold of live Hammonds, which we can use, and I do have some very good of the Nord stuff, and I do have the Contact V4 plugins, which I use. Knowing Hammonds like I do, I'm lucky that I can use the plugin to emulate the actual Hammond rather than me going, I wonder what that does and this does and that does. I know what the bars do on the Hammond. Same with the Wurlitzers, the Rhodes, some of them are live natural Rhodes like we have out there, some of them are plugins. It's a combination. If you can use the two to blend live strings, one violinist over an instrument violin, sounds 10 times better. So if you can get hold of things like that just to add a little bit of character. The thing with today's modern music, with electronic music and dance music, because there's not as much live instrumentation going on, the producers today have to get a lot cleverer, which is some brilliant production out there. Watching some of these videos that I've been watching from the Future Music site, some amazing ideas, some very, very clever, innovative stuff. I don't have to do that so much with this project because I have live people playing. So adding their souls to the record is as much as me doing production to it and adding tricks. I don't have to do that because they've added the tricks for me. So it's a kind of, I can use a bit of both. I find that for me personally is the best way, using a combination of live. So this is a live, my actual Wurlitzer. This is just the verse intro. So that is an actual Wurlitzer. You can even hear the hiss on it and the crackle and everything from her. Because I didn't want to take any of that off. So there's a little bit of crackle and noise, but that just comes with the Wurlitzer. So that's quite a lot going on with that. I've got the SSL on there again, mainly doing a lot of my EQ work with that because it's a very, very precise EQ and I really enjoy it for that. There's not as much compression. Again, with it being legato notes, there's not a huge amount of compression going on there either. It then gets to the reverbs. This is all about the reverbs with this again. There's two on with this one. There's the vintage reverb from Valhalla, which I use, which is this one. And that is really the ambient reverb. That's the one that creates the vibe, gives you the feel of the track, gives you the sensation of where it is in the mix. So the other one I was using is the FabFilter reverb. Now this is more for the placement of the track than anything. So it's more a room sound. So I've created a natural room from the source. So from a Wurlitzer there is no reverb, there is no ambience. So I've created at first the natural room ambience of the Wurlitzer as if we've recorded it and mic'd it up with the speakers, which you can do. Didn't in this instance because it's noisy. Then what I do, once I've added the stock room reverb, so it's just a live sound, then I can start messing with the ambience, which I did with that one. So we added, so there we've got bigger, deeper, wider, everything. And that's again legato notes for the feel. So again, filter, compressor, not doing very much at all. If anything, just waiting for any transient that's peeking over the top just to get rid of it. But again, with legato notes, there's not as much. It's literally taking probably 0.2 of a dB off there. Again, you've got to be careful. It's easy to compress, but watch what you're doing when it comes to live instruments, because you can just compress the whole tone out. One of my favourite parts on the whole Criticised record is the piano. Now this is just an East West stock plug-in piano, but I've spent ages getting the sound that I wanted for it. So again, nothing comes too easy, you've got to work at it. So again, it's a similar kind of feel. If I take everything off, we've just got basic piano. So there's nothing to, you know, there's the reverb from the actual piano sound itself, but I brought it right down, so it's very, very minimal. Again, my favourite SSL that I put on everything, a cut to get the lows just under 70 again. Probably not much going on there, but I'll get rid of it anyway because it takes up space. Something I'll get to in a sec. Slightly more, about 3 dB of compression coming in, just a normal ratio 2:1, nothing too heavy. Again, that 350 we talk about, gone, doesn't need to be there. And a little bit of 10.5, quite 6 dB, quite a big pushing that. Generally for brightness, because it's a bright piano sound that I wanted. So if we put all these together, it's setting the tone for you. Everything's becoming more exciting, everything's getting bigger, getting ready for the chorus to explode. So we're kind of setting things up slowly. So when we finally do get to the chorus, we just have the Rhodes left, which I think this one is the Nord Rhodes, yeah, I think it is. So this is just the basic chords. Now this is the Wurlitzer sound from the Rhodes, which is strange that I would have used my normal Wurlitzer, but it had a tone and a place and an attack to it. And you can just hear there's a little slightly more attack to it than there would normally be on a Wurlitzer. So I kind of went for that. Nothing too tricky again. This Valhalla reverb, you can hear it for yourself. That gives it the life. I like to think of it as dressing things up. I always use analogies. It's how you dress it. You know, you've got a nice looking sound there. Well, how do you dress it? Give it a nice coat, give it a nice hat, and there she goes. She's away. So same SSL again. Mainly EQs. There's the 350 again we talk about. There's the 3 at 10.5. You know, you can look at EQs like your hi-fi. You turn more tone up, more top. That's about 10.5 to 12K on your hi-fi. You can kind of gauge it as you're going along. If you're not familiar with EQs, you can kind of just get a few points of an EQ and then work your way around it. That little trick as well people talk about, finding your resonant peak, is also a good one. So if you quickly just bring the Wurlitzer up, you know, get yourself a little peak and work your way around. Find frequencies that you don't like. Obviously I've done them all, so they're okay. That's your resonant peak, that's what that's called. Ugly frequencies when you sweep, just bring them down a bit. Not too high with the peak, you know, just a little bit, and just roll them out just to get rid of them, and that helps clean a mix up loads. You'd be surprised just how much you can get away with it. There's a little solo on there, but it's the same Rhodes sound, we're using the same effect, so there's nothing too much on that. Probably just slightly less, yeah, just the reverb again, but less. Same EQ settings on the SSL, a little bit less on the reverb. That's just something I added myself just to on the break. Straight. There's that reverb again. But with this time round, there's a lot less decay. It's only 1.17, so there's a lot less on it. So you can hear that compared to how the other one was when I give it a bit more. That's roughly the reverbs for the others, but that has less because I want that with it. Again, it's staccato notes. There's no legato in it, so it's quick. Everything has to be quick. So with quick instruments, quick playing, the compressors and the reverbs work quicker. You can't have them longer because they get out of the way. Don't be too bothered about, oh, how much millisecond is my reverb compared to how the tempo of the track is. That's great, fantastic if you can do that, but there's not loads of people out there who bother with that, so don't get too technical. It's all by ear. Now there is another Rhodes there which I didn't use. I'll just play you quickly. This was my second Rhodes I was going to use, which has a bit of dirtier sound, but I'd added that much with the rest of the instruments that we didn't need it, so it was dead simple. So that's all the keyboards. Now just quickly onto the group that I use. I group everything. I'm very specific about groups, so kicks, snares, toms, overheads, whole kit, bass, all left and right guitars, then into guitar groups, strings and brass go into an orchestra group, all vocals go into, and I'm a bugger for it, and I just have to put everything in groups. It's easier to control. Dave Pensado says for every time you add a group you lose something, but we gain something. I agree with that totally. So my groups are very, it's almost like another mix. It's a 3-stage mix. We mix the drum set, mix the drum kit, we put it into a group, we mix the drums with the bass, with the guitar, with the keys. It's like a double mix. So once you've done your mix, you can almost stem mix again. So it's like a double mix. You can mix on the fly these days, which is what we do a lot of. So I'll just quickly show you this group. Right, so on the keys group, I've got just the Q1 just to bring it down, just to stop any peaks coming through. The Arvox, again, is more of a gate than anything else. It's just an easy gate to throw on. I get a little bit of 12.5 on the, just to brighten the whole keys up. A little bit of 10 just to give them a shelf. The whole thing though. Don't usually EQ a group, but on this instance it was enough. The compressor's there just to for warmth, and the tube again, and a bit of a gain, just because I didn't want to mess with the levels. So I just brought the whole lot of keys up again. So that's quite straightforward with those. So on to quickly onto the guitars. There's not as many guitars in this track as we'd normally use. So 2 mics, an SM57 and a Rode M3. So here's your 57. Quite an old, again, old 70s sound we went for. This is a very expensive Telecaster that we borrowed, if I can remember rightly for it. Going through a Roland amp. That's 1 mic, that's the 57. So again, just the SSL channel with a little bit of EQing, tiny bit of compression, a gate to stop any of the hiss, but only subtly because I don't want to lose too much. You know, you start getting a pumping effect then if you lose much. So again, reverb is what's driving that. Again, I'm a big fan of reverb creating space. Overuse, you can kill a mix. Underuse, you can really get it. So there's a tight, very dry, no, not much depth. There's the room sound. That's more of a room than anything else. Again, talk about getting the sound from source, adding your room sound. So if you've not got a big room to record in, the best trick I can suggest is, if you don't have a big live room and you want a live sound, put a room reverb on first and then affect it with the reverb afterwards. It gets a double thing, but just be careful, especially with the density and the frequency of the reverbs. So again, we'd say probably the same with the M3, which is a cardioid version of a dynamic 57. Slightly further away and slightly more reverb to just give it a bit more depth again. So one on top of itself. So that's just the far reverb, just the near reverb. So the two together blend really well. So that's those two. There's another guitar part on here which is from the original, again, something that I really wanted to do. Jelly Bean Johnson, who originally wrote Criticised with Alex and played all the guitars on the Jam and Lewis stuff, this is one of his parts. So I played this myself, going for a Sly and the Family Stone kind of feel, used a Telecaster clean straight into an amp, played with my thumb. The same way Sly Stone played a lot of his stuff. This is 2 mics again, a 57 and an M3. So basically me playing with the thumb, no pick, just clicking the guitar as hard as I could to create that kind of sound. Those of you that know funk music or listen to that, that's how you get that sound. It's a thumb. So again, there's nothing on that at all. No compression, no reverb, not anything on that, because I wanted to do that. Then I stuck it into a group. That's when we start messing with the reverb again. Just the Valhalla stuff. Very, very small though, room sound. Room sound. Okay, take off. So we've got a nice dry, uninteresting sound, you know. And then we go with the reverb, slightly more interesting. Understanding reverb is a huge, huge part of production. If you can understand where each reverb comes from, each moment in time, what reverb choices they had, it really opens up your possibilities. So again, with this, we've got the Fab filter on it, just rolling off everything probably around 30, not needed. It's quite a bright sound anyway, so I didn't need that. And some of your low mids and a tiny bit of a shelf, not really making any relevance to it. About 9 decibels at 10, just because with me playing it a certain way with no pedals and everything, it was a slightly duller sound than I normally would have had. So I had just a little shelf on there. So, well, that was from the original, so I had to keep that. It's one of my favourite parts of the whole thing. So the final guitars were B Digger's guitars, and obviously he's the meat of the song when it comes to guitars. Alex is a huge fan of Digger and his playing, and how he plays. So I'll just take you through the verse guitar quickly. So again, same 57s and M3s, 2 mics. So this one, because it's Digger's our lead guitar player, he plays slightly different with a bit more dynamic. So I'll give the compressor on first this time, just to kind of put a lid on it, just to keep control of it. Nothing big, it's nothing major, it's not slamming it or anything. It's just a little subtleties there. It's a fast release, again, because it's staccato, so the release needs to be quick, so the compressor's not staying on it for too long. So it has time to go back, reset and start again. So yeah, probably about 1.2 dB of compression, that's all we're using. And same with the EQ. Quite a lot going on, quite a big scoop going on there, 300, 160 to 300 to 500 there, so there's 3, making a nice little scoop. Because again it's a chunky kind of guitar sound, I wanted the bottom end in, so I've only dropped it out at 20, I've just dropped there. And a bit of a shelf, again 5 decibels at 9.3 just for brightness. Dropped a bit of 600 out there with that kind of, where you start to get the MIDI cross between the low and the mid peak. And I've dropped a bit of 3 out because there was quite a lot of 3K on his actual guitar unit, so I dropped that out just to kind of just to compromise with the sound. And again, just the tube compressor on there, not really doing any compressing, just there for the sound and the valve sound from it. So Digger's guitars are similar all the way through. From this one, now this is a slightly heavier guitar sound, and reason why, because if you listen to the original Criticise, Jelly Bean has a very big Van Halen style distorted guitar going through the chorus, so I wanted a bit more with this. It's slightly heavier sound. Now the compressor is hitting a little harder on this one because there's more legato notes, longer notes. So I want these to come up in the mix a little bit more. So the ratios are the same at 4, and the attack and the release are fast at 17 milliseconds and 200 milliseconds. So again, legato and staccato have 2 different release and attack. If you nail your attack and your release right with your compressors, your life will change. You know, all of a sudden you'll wake up one day and go, oh, I can do this, you know. Otherwise you can mess yourself up. So slightly more distorted, slightly heavier compression just to bring it together. And then I think we've just got his solo left, which is the verse solo. I wanted to link the 2 with this, talking about the arrangement. We've gone out of a big chorus, we've gone into a big swell. Where do we go now? Well, we need to link between the second verse. So I thought a nice guitar solo keeps the power and the energy of the track up, doesn't lose any of the excitement of the track, then brings us into a verse, which I deliberately took everything out of from the first verse. So it's very bare. So we're going from quite big to very little to quite big, which creates, obviously, a lot of excitement within the track. So let me double check what this part is. And this is bridge ending. Same again. So all we did with that, we wanted to still, you say Criticise, just to double the track, just to double Alex's vocal there. So it's the same sound as the one above it. Again, using the delay, the timeless delay, which I'll show you, which is on the group at the end. Again, not within a rhythm, for quite washy, so it has its own dynamic range and its own way of filtering through the track. You can be too rigid with your tempos and your you know, quarter notes and your 8th notes and things like that. You start to lose a little bit of energy. So on the guitar groups, just quickly, again, just a little bit of EQ, a little bit of 12. I dropped a little bit of 180 out, that kind of where the guitars get a bit thuddy and a bit chunky at the bottom. And there's nothing else really on that group. It's just again the compressor for the valve, but not actually doing any compression. So then the solo, which is I'm just going to show you, same sound again, which was good because we managed to keep the same kind of continuity throughout. We just brought him out slowly. So on that, like I said before, is the delay for it to drop. The delay out of there, you can just hear it's a little bit more rigid. There's the bigger delay. There's still a tiny delay on his pedal board because I like to set the sounds as well. I don't just like to give a flat sound all the time and then do it. I like them. If you're working with the band have to be happy. You don't remember this as a producer. You have to make them happy. They have to want to do this. So they have to be interested in the sound that they're playing in the first place. So I just added a little bit more of a parallel delay just at the end, just to take the delay from the initial sound and just lengthen it a little bit. Again, be careful, it gets washy, it starts messing in, be careful. So that's the guitar. So again, back to the group, everything's the same, a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, nothing more. So we're getting to the main crux of the song now, which is the strings and the brass, and this is where it starts to get, this is where it picks up in its energy. Again, a combination of live strings, live sampled strings of people playing it that have been sampled, so there's a combination of everything going in. And basically with this, what I'll tend to do is I'll arrange everything. Sometimes we'll score it out before we do it just to see it, or most of the time I'll just go with ear and how I feel, and then I put everything into a group. And the reason why I do this is because violins don't go on their own, nor does a cello, nor does the bass, nor does a trumpet. They go together in an orchestra. So I kind of look at them like an orchestra. So all my strings go into an orchestra group, which is then treated as if it's one stereo recording of the orchestra. So I'll just play a little bit of the intro strings, and then I'll talk you through the group. That's just the strings, no brass. Go from legato to staccato notes again. So on the end, I will just EQ the whole string section, drop out some low ends, just bring a few mids in, scoop some low mids, bring a bit of top up. Again, the same. Usually what I'll do also is I then put it into an orchestra group with the brass, and I affect that. So there's a little bit of the Valhalla reverb on there as well, that 70s reverb, to give the space. So take it off, there's still a bit of there. But the time and the depth carries on going, and depth, we keep talking about depth again. Now with this, I'm behind Alex, so there's nothing over the top of his vocal, so the reverb is going after his vocal with the strings behind. So again, into that group with the orchestra is just a little bit of EQ and quite a heavy reverb. So if I stick the brass in, I'll put there go on a separate thing as well. See where they are. Okay, so with them again, it's not 4 people in a room brass. That's not what we're going for. So it's not in your face and kind of right there. This is a big brass section. There's only 2 with Bob and AJ, but we double. Sometimes bring trombone players in. Again, it's depth. I don't want it to be in your face. I need them to be back in the distance, so it sounds like there's 10 of them playing instead. So again, it's all on the choice of reverb. So there's a little bit of parallel going on there. So there's some already on the channel from the brass. I'm going to find that and get rid of that. So on that brass channel there, we've got a vintage warmer. Again, trumpets can be dead scratchy if you're not careful with the mic placement, so we've got a vintage warmer on again with the tape speed up to full. Be very careful with that. Tape speed up to full is better quality, so just watch that if you're using the PSPs. Not much drive going on. I just really want the warmth, and just to get, again, cohesive, this word we use a lot, just to get that together. Then we've got the saturation on it. Again, slightly more tape emulation, which is never a bad thing with brass or this kind of sound if you do it subtly. Taste is the word. To taste is my favourite phrase. Like I said, adding the brass and the strings to one group again creates that orchestra feel. So I have more control. So I have to have the separate group strings and then the brass, then we put them together as an orchestra group. So we're having a little bit of control over it. So you can do more then. You can have more reverbs on, harder compressors, and you're only controlling the one channel as opposed to individual ones. So it's something, if you get your brass from source, it's a lot easier. The natural sound, again, more natural. So the whole thing as an orchestra. Quickly through the verse. There's the reverb missing. Put it back in. Just hear them. More on the timpani than anything. The timpani just disappears. Another trick, if you're using stock strings and instrument strings, put the timpani in there, playing with the kick drum or playing with the bass note. Something to add more authenticity to your string section. Why not? I've played the timpani as a timpani player would do, playing the 2 notes, playing the B and the A, like a timpani player would play, and it does help to add with the instrument strings and the live violins and things. It helps to add that little more authenticity to it. So same with the chorus. Stabs. Brass is only stabbing. So that's the whole thing. So that is basically 3 live people and a lot of instrument and a lot of care and attention into what's going on to make it sound like that. We haven't all got huge soundstage budgets, have we? So we've got to be careful with what we do. And the one last thing, just 2 little quick things to show you. I've also added French horns into that now from the instruments. This is a John Barry thing, a Bond thing that I'm mad on. So if you add low French horns, there's registers in tracks, there's registers in an orchestra. So if you're losing a bit of bottom end in an orchestra, add a bottom end instrument to it. Can be a stock instrument, doesn't have to be a live one, but use the registers of each instrument. A violin has a high register, cello has a low register. So don't confuse your registers if you're trying to make good sounding strings with instruments. You know, there's a way for it. Adding that French horn really makes a difference, especially on the stabs. Stick it all in. We'll take them out. So we've lost our bottom end all of a sudden, haven't we? So they're out. And come back in again. So there's that power of the bottom end coming back. So the only last musical instrument thing is choirs. So it's a vocal thing usually, but again, this is using a combination of the lads in the room doing, or me mainly doing the choir, and an actual plug-in choir. It's the East West orchestral choir bank that I actually used. So this is a combination of us singing and an actual choir. And that's heavily reverbed again. But with no reverb, it sounds like a flat sound. It could be anything. Yeah? Vintage Valhalla reverb. A lot of decay this time. We're going sort of like up to 5 with it. People sometimes are fear putting that amount of reverb on something, but if you know where it's going, if you know where that's going, and it's blending into the strings. So again, we're using a combination of live people singing and an instrument plug-in, but we've created a live feel from it. So that's a nice trick to use. Right, finally then we've done, we're on to the backing vocals, which is just basically 5 of the girls that we use singing live as they would do, and again very little in terms of plugins on this, because I wanted to do it as a group at the end. The only trick I've done with this, what I found was there wasn't enough power in the backing vocals. There wasn't enough, not from them, from the actual on top of the track. So I thought to myself, I went through a lot of different things and ended up adding distorted vocals to it, which was very kind of new for me. It's not something I would usually have done, but I'll just quickly give you the difference in. So we've added. So there's the vocal.
You don't realize I just want what is right, still you say criticize.
So one more time with no distortion.
You just close your mind.
Okay, and then I'm going to bring it in.
You don't realize.
You can just hear all of a sudden there's more going on in the background, and we get this other mismatching of different transients and different sounds instead of it all being on top of itself. So you're getting blocks, you're getting this nice blend again. To get the distortion to sound like that, you can put it on as a parallel, which helps. This, I wanted it to be quite prominent and quite in your face. So I basically doubled the track, so it's 2 of Rachel's vocal. Just play the 2 together. So it's Rachel's normal vocal as it is, which is this one. And that's the distorted version. There's the 2 together.
I just want what is right, still you say criticize.
And bring Fran back in and myself back in and Camilla back in. So you can hear it, it's very prominent. It's very prominent in the group mix when you solo it like that, but sticking it in the track, it disappears behind the actual backing vocal. So again, that's something to taste, something you have to play around with. And for the backing vocal group, that just all goes again to a group. And I've got the Fab Filter again going there, which is the compressor just to tie it all together and keep it glued. control of it. About 3 dB going, is it? 2.5, sorry.
You don't
Again,
realize.
not much, it's not hitting hard.
I just
It's a lot
want
more
what
to
is
the
right
slower
still.
attack time. The best thing, if you're not sure, slower attack beats fast every time because the compressor has time to reset and start again. So always think about that when you're getting for an initial plug-in sound with your compressor. Always start with the slower attack. So slightly faster release so it lets it through again.
You
It's just a
just
clue.
close
It's
your
just a clue.
mind. Ooh.
When I turn it off, you can it's subtle, but you
You
can hear
don't
it.
realize.
Just gets
I
a
just
lid.
want what is right, still you
Gets a
say
lid.
criticize.
And it's just a nice way of finishing it off. So same with the other backing vocals, and then we've got mine, which is just the last thing, is my little Prince tribute to Prince, because Alex is obviously from Minneapolis, and he had obviously those of you who know him know the history with Prince and what he did to him and how all that happened. So it wasn't more the Minneapolis sound; it was more that I wanted to bring to it. I wasn't really happy with our mid late at all, so we kind of added this total new mid late for it. And this is me doing my little Prince kind of. So again, we're going for lots of guys in a room. Shut your eyes and think Paisley Park. Big room, big stage, big. You know, I look at that. I know how Paisley Park looks. Look at it like that. Shut your eyes and think. Guys in a room together, all kind of singing, even though it's one guy doubled up. So on that, I've got a doubler going on, which is 4 times the vocal, just to make it slightly wider, even though I've got 8 going there at the same time. So the doubler is very subtle, it's just on. Now what I've done is I've turned off the direct source, so this is running parallel. You turn off the direct source so you don't get it twice, and then basically just add a couple 45-degree pans. I think it's very, very minimal. It's 23.7 delay on one and 9.4 on the other. So they're very, very, very subtle, but they just help to create that little more space. And then obviously the last thing is the reverb. So if I take both those off and play that. More of a room, not quite as big. Everything back on. And there creates the depth again. If you use a room reverb, you can add more percentage of the mix level. If you're adding plate reverbs and big reverbs, be careful how much you add. That's the trick with that. So smaller room sounds with a bigger time can help create a bigger sound that isn't as washy, that you have more control over. And then finally, once everything's gone into groups, there's a little bit of a Tokyo EQ, which I love. Then it's the Dave Pensado thing, something that he does, and I kind of copied him. This is quite heavy on the 10K. It's about 5 dB on that, just to brighten the whole music up. It doesn't touch the vocal; it goes into a separate music track. Just it touches it a little bit, and then I send it to the out. Got a little bit of 1.6 on there as well, just for punch, because it's a deep song, and because we're going for a big deep sound, you kind of got to help the mids out occasionally. You just got to help them through sometimes. So that touches the music side of it, doesn't touch the vocal, then goes into the final my plugins at the end. And basically this is just for me to, before I send it to mastering, and this is just my little touch myself. Again, the SSL channel strip, which you've seen I've used a lot of, that's on there, but doing nothing, just to give it character. There's no EQ dropping out, no compression or anything. The Tokyo's on again, not always, but this is just bringing some air. So you can't, 20 kilohertz, you don't always hear that, it's not always prominent, but sometimes mentally, putting 2 decibels on as a producer, you go, yeah, that sounds brighter. Might not always, mentally it does. If you can set mentally, you'll go a lot faster, a lot quicker, a lot further. Once you have mental battles in your head, oh, is that right? Oh, and you're questioning. So sometimes you have to just do something that makes your brain think, yeah, I'm happy. And if you take it off, you wouldn't know. But that's just a mental thing, just sometimes to set you off. But not in this instance, again, deep song needed a bit of air helping out. So that's that. And then one of my favourite little tricks at the end is this LMB, which is a linear phase multiband from Waves. And again, all I do with that is I touch the bottom end, I touch the top end, and then I just pull the master down. So each band of the compressor is very subtly just keeping everything together. You can bang that on a mix as it is, and people go, wow, that's just made it sound like a proper song straight away. And if I just play a little bit of the track without any of the final plugins on, start with the intro.
You look better when you put things down. Value your opinion.
Straight away already that.
Don't criticize my friend.
Again with it off.
Don't criticize my idea. Don't criticize.
Just me finalising before it goes to master in this case, which was me, so it was okay. But before it goes to master, it was just finalising. And then just the very, very final thing on it is the SSL compressor, which again I love. Very, very, very quick release and a very, very slow attack to let everything through. Because it's mastering, because there's 180 odd tracks playing at the same time, there's no space. You have to create space, which I've done with that. And if you watch it, it's not. It brings it all together. It's the glue of the track, and that's what kind of keeps everything. Again, mentally, you look at it and you think, right, I've got everything controlled and where I need it to be. And once you look at it that way, it frees your mind up for the mix. So that is just about everything for that. I could go deeper, I could spend hours and hours more going into it, but you've not got the time, and I've not got the time either. So that's where we're up to with that. Okay, so we're into the vocals, and Mr. O'Neill is with me here to talk through them. I'll just basically tell you what we did and how we recorded it, and then see if Alex wants to tell you a little bit about his feelings on the vocal takes. So basically with this, I have the same chain. I have two separate chains for Alex, which I'll go through. This is the main chain that I use for most of the vocals that we record. So basically for this, just a little de-esser on it, which takes a little bit of, about 3.5 with Alex's voice. I like to keep control of it around that frequency, just for power purposes. And then we've got the SSL channel on it, which has got high pass and low pass filters, just to round things off. Again, that frequency we talk about, the 350, which is out there again, which causes muddiness. So we get rid of that for clarity purposes. We've got a reverb on the actual track itself, which I'll play in a sec, but I'll just show you through it first. So quite a big, quite a long time on this one, so about 2.3, just to create, again, a little bit of depth on it. I don't want to be too much on the vocal, because you can do the parallel stuff later on. So I didn't want too much on it at that point. We've got a little RVox on there, which is a great little vocal compressor, just again to finish off any transients that I've got through with the reverb on. We can just bring those down afterwards. Try not to compress before the reverb too heavy or after the reverb too heavy, just somewhere in between to get a nice balance to keep control of it. So then we've got, again, something I use loads on my vocals is the Vintage Warmer. It's not doing anything specifically, it's just on. And that just adds a little bit of grit and a little bit more warmth to it again, which Alex doesn't really need, but it's just there to enhance what's already there. And then we've got the mix saturator again, tape saturation, again, just for some more warmth, a little bit more character, and just to keep, just a little bit more control again. Vocals are all about control. I'm not a huge fan of automation. This is going to sound weird to a lot of people. Not a huge fan of automation. I'm a huge fan of getting the levels right. I like to go in and cut and volume myself. Automation can get a bit messy sometimes when there's a lot of things going on, especially a lot of vocals. So I like to try and keep as much control as I can first before I have to do any automation. And then again, the compressor on at the end just to finish it off.
You know, it's so amazing because now you're telling me, you're giving us the technical aspect of how my vocals get the sound the way they do. I get the luxury of coming in as an artist and just going, you know, can you just do this, or can you do that, or can you do this, and not thinking that he's got to go through several processes to get my voice to where we both feel comfortable with where it should be, you know. And I often equate what Alex does in the studio, and it's kind of difficult, but when you recorded in a lot of top studios, especially in Los Angeles, and if you've ever had your record mastered by a mastering lab in Los Angeles called Bernie Gernman, mm-hmm. If you ever had your record, then you would be so spoiled that you wouldn't. It would be very difficult for you to work with other people. And working with Alex, coming to Manchester, working with Alex and Jay and the whole Mama Freedom crew has been wonderful because he really he's got my voice down pat. He knows how to get the sound out that's going to complement what we're trying to achieve, and that's basically all we're doing is trying to get the best sound we can. It's not about I like it, you like it. Yeah. Is it the best? Yeah. Yes, it's the best. So that's what we always try to achieve. And now I'm getting to know all of the processes that you go through just to get me happy. Get me happy.
The one thing with Alex's voice is you get artists who don't need much doing to them. Some people feel that they have to throw all kinds of stuff on. All I have to do is make Alex sound as good as he is. That's the trick. I don't have to do any more or less to him. I just have to make him sound as good as he is, enhance all his qualities, and that's all I try and do. His plug-in strip is different to anybody else's. He has his own unique strip. Alex likes a specific amount of reverb, so I always have my parallel reverb running, which is something you chose, didn't you, eventually? It was after a few sessions. Alex wanted a specific depth of his reverb, so this is where we talked about not saturating the reverb on the main vocal and just adding it in later. So if I just play you,
can't you find something else to talk about?
So that's with all the reverb.
Is this song the only one you sing?
If I just take out,
makes you look better when you put things down.
One.
Who value your opinion?
And just drop out any reverbs. There's a little delay on there as well.
Can't you find something else to talk about?
That's dry of reverb.
Is this song the only one you sing?
Alex's
makes you look better when you put things down. Who value your opinion?
And one just for a little bit of depth.
Don't criticize my friends.
So that creates the big space that we were talking about before, with Alex sitting on top with the band in the background and him being nice and prominent, but he doesn't sit too far on top. He kind of blends in with the band, but doesn't disappear behind them. And that's controlling the reverb, controlling the compressor, and the vocalist obviously as well.
Well, I think that, one of the important things to know as a vocalist when you're recording is that tone. Tone is so important. Listen, I couldn't express it enough. I learned this many years ago, and that's the reason why my approach to recording is pretty much like a surgeon's. I'm in, I'm going to do the surgeon, somebody else close, okay, close it up, and that's the way my approach is because of the fact that over the years I have learned the importance of tone, and it's so difficult for a producer like Alex or any producer to really give you the best record you can get if the tones don't match up. They have to match up. So you have to have this approach to it. Everything I do is I'm trying to get the same tone that I approved of. If I got a tone in the song and I said, okay, that was the one. So all night during that whole recording session, that's the tone that I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to give the producer. I'm trying to give him, so when I'm really trying to make his job much more difficult as I can, because I want to give him so much good stuff until he has so much stuff to choose from, and all of it's good. So it's kind of like, okay, well, this is good, that's good, and you get that type of agreement with two people working together when you approach it from a tone point of view. When a lot of vocals go in and they want to sing it like they hear it or like they sing it. Well, that's fine. The feeling and the passion should be there. But also, technically speaking, you got to go in there and you got to find that tone is even. So you give them that same tone through that whole thing. So once the producer gets your recording, it makes his job, it's like so much easier, and yours as well. So, its tone is so much important in the process of recording a record. Really is.
Yeah, we have a way of doing it as well. I developed. Alex is so fast when he records. He's very, very quick. He wants it there. Sometimes I have 4 tracks running at the same time recording with Alex. I don't do this with anybody else. It's just because he's so fast when he records. He can give me the whole song 3 times. Then he might decide he wants 1 line. He might decide he wants 1 word. He might decide he wants to do the whole thing again. But the tone is always the same. So I have to be so fast. He might want to do a whole phrase but with just 1 word out, so I have to bring that for him, and I have to keep him moving, so to keep his energy levels up, to keep him happy so he can perform. You know, I can't keep singers waiting. You can't keep them, oh, just hold on a minute, that's not right. You know, so you have to be on the ball. You have to move fast with vocalists as quality as Alex. You have to be quick to get the job done.
But it's one of the things that, you know, as a vocalist, you got to challenge yourself. Yeah. Your discipline level when you walk into these types of environment has to be spot on. You got to be disciplined. You got to actually know what you want to achieve. You have to have order within your whole process of going into this thing. So when I come into the studio, I've already gotten prepared for that session like 2 days before. I'm already there. And the closer I get to my time, if my time is 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, when I come in, I'm like already there. So, you know, it's about having your focus, man, and being so focused when you come in to do this. It just, and that whole process is different from the creative aspect of it. And it's so different from anything that you could do live on stage or anything like that. That is so different. You know, this requires a whole nother type of artist, a whole nother type of beast. So if you can put it's a conjunction of things, if you can put them all together, then it's going to be much more pleasant for you and whoever you're working with. So, you know, it's a good thing.
So you remember when we first did Criticise, you spoke to me about you wanted the vocals to be a bit harder, didn't you? A bit more, have a bit more aggression to them.
Well, I did, because, you know, I know the difference between when you are working with musician producers, and you're working with a band, someone who works with a band all the time. See, a lot of producers don't work with bands anymore. They used to many years ago, but they don't work with bands anymore. They're just producing music now. But you, unlike them, you're actively performing, out doing the whole thing with the band, so you bring a whole nother perspective to producing, and it's all fresh. It's all live. It's aggressive and energetic, and that's what I wanted. You know, I wanted this album, the Hearsay 30 album. I wanted it to have that type of energy. Yeah. That like a song like Criticise. I wanted to do it harder because I would have, and I had the opportunity to be involved with some things that 30 years ago, I didn't have the opportunity to do, you know. So I'm putting stuff in records, the different twists that we're taking on the record. You and I, we agree on it. We're putting different twists in it that maybe that's the way I would have did it 30 years ago, okay? But now, since look, guys, I really don't know what I want to be when I grow up yet, okay? I really don't get that. But when I do grow up, you know, this album is a more mature album, and it's a grown-up Hearsay. Yeah. And that's what Criticise is. Criticise is a grown-up Criticise now. Like so that's the most intriguing point to me, and hopefully that my fans will, you know, get this and enjoy it, and as well as I definitely enjoyed putting it together for you. So it's fantastic. Yeah.
Fun, didn't we? So yeah, we're slightly more aggressive vocal. That's what I went for. And just another couple of things to add with the vocal. There's a delay on there which we've added, which again is the parallel delay, which is running separate.
Thing us to talk about. Is this song the only one you sing? Makes you look better when you put things down.
So what we've got on this channel is an amp simulator for a little bit of distortion with Alex's voice, an oscillating echo, a 1960s echo on it as well. And that whole reason was because everything Alex has sang for 30 years has been a statement. He sings statements, that's what he sings. Everything means things, everything has a meaning or a subject matter. So it was almost like a megaphone effect. It was all I wanted him to stand there and give the Criticise, because somebody said in an interview, which was great, Criticise is so relevant lyrically now, with all how much fake things are going on and social media and all that. So it's as relevant vocally, lyrically today as it was 30 years ago. So I was kind of wanted him to be statesman-like on the record. That's because that's what he is. So he's making statements to people, to the world. So I wanted that feeling from the effect, which is why we've gone for this distorted, delayed kind of feel.
Talk about
can just...
Is this song the only one you sing?
Very, very subtle, but it's there.
Makes you look better when you put things down.
That's without...
Who value your opinion?
That's with it. And there's
Don't criticize.
one other little trick that's people use. So just quickly, the delay, quickly tell you about that. The delay is not a rhythmically set delay to any time signature. It's a washy delay, because I wanted it to be different from where the song was going rhythmically. I wanted it to weave in and out of the song, so it almost had its own life, which obviously Alex does as a vocalist. He's front and centre, the band is secondary, so I wanted him to just weave into the band with the delay, just wash over it, so there's no rhythm. It's not a, you know, in any kind of tempo. It's just 350 milliseconds, which is a good echo sound if you need it to be that. And then obviously I've got the BT echo set to the 1961 there, which you can see, 1964, but minimal. He doesn't need anything on his voice to make it sound better. It's just to enhance things, what we talked about before.
You know something. You know something else that I want to share with that's so important, and to a lot of vocalists. You know, when they come in and to do this, to do these different things, a lot of times we don't know our thing that we're so used to somebody telling us what to do. See, I've been in this business so long, and I've been around this stuff so much. For example, now back in the day when I was recording all the records and all the great records and stuff I did, I loved working with Jimmy and Tara, and they're excellent songwriters. And at the same time, my voice was mixed inside of their music. It almost like they were selling their production, and my voice was secondary. It wasn't, my voice wasn't first. Fortunately enough for me, that my voice was so powerful until you can't
hide it.
You can't hide me, because I don't. You can't do it. And then if I even suspect that you're trying to hide me, then it's gonna get more powerful. Okay, but you know, and I have that going for me. But the amazing thing about it is that I think that I'm enjoying this much more, because I don't have to even question anything about Alex. Alex he's studied my voice for so long, which is like 3 years now, and for so long, and I just, you know, it's such an honor for me to come in the studio and be able to work with someone who has my back, who's got the technical side all down pat, and that's what it is, you know, and that's a really great thing to have.
We both have an agreement, don't we, that we don't let anything go out unless both of us are
totally
100% happy with it.
And the thing is that I don't do anything special to get prepared for this. You know, and to be honest with you, I'm not a religious man, I'm a spiritual man. And everything I do in reference to my gift is all because of my God, who I believe in, and I say it very openly. And I do praise God each and every day for allowing me to sing in these songs. 30 years later, I'm still singing in the same key, still singing the songs. We haven't dropped the keys. We're still singing the same thing. I didn't say I was hitting all the notes now all the time, okay? Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't get it right. But that's a blessing to me. So to be able to still do this and to come in, because when you get older and you're a more mature artist, that's one of the things that goes away, your power, your strength. You can tell the difference in a young Marvin Gaye and an older Marvin Gaye. You know the sound. A young Gladys Knight, an older Gladys Knight. You know the sound. If you know it, you hear it. And because everything, when you're younger, is so easy, it's so automatic. You don't even think about it. You never thought, but I never thought that I would, like I have a note on Saturday Love I did with Sherelle. I never thought that I would never be able to hit that note. I got someone covering for me on stage with that note. I can hit the note, but I can't hold it anymore. So I can hit it, but I can't hold it. And that's the one, you stay on my mind. And people want to sing, they sing right along with it. Yeah. So when I don't go there, they look at me like, wait a minute, what's going on with him? You know.
Where's my note, Mr. O'Neill?
Yeah, where's my note, Mr. O'Neill? You know, so it's like that. But yeah, this is a great thing, and I'm just enjoying really. And another thing, you gotta keep recording as an artist. I don't care how old, I don't care how long you've been, you don't ever give up the studio. I have so many tracks that people have never heard before because I keep recording, and that's what you do. Because when you stop recording, you're not even in the game anymore. The rest of it, sure, we're gonna do good on stage and do the things that it takes to keep the lights on, to keep the mortgage paid, take care of business, take care of family. We're gonna do those things. But when you stop recording, you're not in the game. You're not even on the bench. So keep recording, guys. Keep recording.
Okay, well that's it. Thanks for joining me and Mr. O'Neill at the Voodoo Suite Studios in Manchester. We hope you've enjoyed it and found a little bit of this informative. And make sure you check out Hearsay 30, which is out now.
And the great thing about it is that he called me Mr. O'Neill. I'm Mr. O'Neill. Wow, I've been waiting a long time to be Mr. O'Neill.